Hey, my name is James Mossholder. I am going to bring you into a deal that was sent to me by my VA team. We are going to evaluate it and see if it's a good deal to send to a fund. If you've been following me, you know that I sell deals to hedge funds and private equity funds. And I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now. My goal here is to teach you all how to do the same thing. It's very important that we learn how to underwrite these correctly for the funds and their criteria. And so we're going to go through one right now. And this is a live deal that I'm working on. And so we are going to pop into Zillow. Here, I'm just going to go into Zillow and we are going to bring the property up here and the address 104 Canton, Georgia. All right, so this is the property we're working on today, and so we are going to see if this is a go or no go, pretty much. You can see it's on market for 344. So I'm at 344K. One thing we want to do is check it for the level of rehab that's needed. And so obviously there's a good amount of pictures here, and you can tell some work has been done to the property recently. Flooring looks in pretty new shape. Some new light fixtures. Looks like the paint is pretty fresh here. So cosmetic wise, it's pretty much rent ready. Kitchen looks like it's in good shape. House is very clean. Appliances, kind of hard to tell from the pictures, but they do look like they're in good shape as well. So probably newer appliances. We always want to ask about the big ticket items like the roof, the HVAC, the water heater, windows, right? Things that you can't really see in pictures, but are big ticket items, right? If the roof needs to be replaced, that's going to be pretty costly, and we're going to have to add that into our rehab. Now, one thing we do need to make sure too is that this property and the stats on the property work for the funds. And so when I say stats, I'm talking about the bed bath count, square footage, the year build. And so when we're working with funds, especially the big boys, you know what? They want 3 bed, 2 bath minimum. Um, and so this property specifically is 3 bed, 3 bath. And so one thing you do have to pay attention to is that 3 bath can be tricky sometimes. So you can kind of go over here and it'll show when you scroll over the bath, it actually has 2 full baths and 1 half bath, right? So sometimes you will see this says 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, and then you scroll over it and it'll actually be 1 full bath and 1 half bath. Well, that's a no-go. Right, so we do want to confirm when it says 3 baths that it's at least 2 full bathrooms, and then we'll come down to the listing here, and it does say 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath. Again, works perfectly. 1,900 square feet, 2,000 square feet, perfect. So these are great stats for a property. Some funds do want 2-car garages, and so if we see here, we have a 2-car garage, so that's great as well. Rehab here is going to be minimal. Right. Um, if it's been lived in, maybe needs some new paint, maybe needs a new refrigerator. But as right now, if I think the property really needs nothing, I'm still going to put something in there. So for this property, I'm just going to allocate about $10,000 for miscellaneous things that maybe we're not seeing in the photos, right? So that's about 10K um, for the rehab. And now, working with the agent on this property, we actually have it at 300,000 currently, right? So we're going to take our 300,000 purchase price and excuse my terrible handwriting and our 10,000 rehab. This can give us our total acquisition price of 310K, right? Now, when we're evaluating these properties for the funds, we really want to get down to what the gross yield of the property will be. Pretty much, how much is this property going to take in per month in rent, and then per year in rent, And how does that compare to the purchase price and rehab price, right? So what I typically will do next is I will get into the Zillow rental estimate, which again, these resources are free. So anyone could use this. We're going to copy this address and we're going to paste it into here. Now, a lot of people will say, hey, just scroll down, right? And they're right. So we can actually scroll down here and it's going to give us our rental estimate. But like a purchase price, same thing with the rental estimate, we wanted to confirm this number. Like, how do we actually know it can rent for 2,047 a month? So I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to look at the map down here. And I'm going to look for like is like properties, like for like properties, right? So down here in the neighborhood, you can see we have one for about 2,100, 2,400, 2 grand, 2,100, 2,200, 2,150, and this is 2,000, right? So again, we're right about that 2,000 square foot mark, 4 bed, 2.5 bath, so now we're looking at this property right here. Very similar. We have an extra half bath. That can maybe add a little bit to the rental estimate, but I don't want to overshoot it, right? So I'm pretty confident in the number that it's giving us this time, right? I probably wouldn't want to take in this property. You can see these properties are slightly different when it comes to lot size. This 2,400 a month property. Let's see this one right here. This has been active for 4 hours. We really can't see um, how much action this is getting, right? We have one here that's been active for 2 days. So sometimes I will actually even pop into this. It looks a little bit different. You can tell the lot sizes are much smaller. 6 days, one contact. So that's not bad. Let's see, we can actually check this one. This is a pretty nice property. Very similar to our property. 2 days, two contacts. So that's actually getting some pretty good action. We want to see if the condition is pretty similar to ours. It's, not far off. So I could be pretty confident that, our property will rent for what it's saying. I would actually even be confident to say that we could probably get maybe about 2,100 for it. So that's the number that I'm going to use, 2,100 a month. Right. And so we want to get the yearly capture here. So we're going to take that 2,100 a month and multiply it by 12 months. And that's going to give us a number. 2,100 times 12. We're looking at 25,200 a year in rent. So now to get the gross rental yield, we are going to take that yearly rent, the 25,200, and divide it by our total cost of the property, which is going to be 310,000. Right? So we're going to take 25,200 and divide this by 310,000. And that's going to give us a gross yield of 8.1%. Now, this property again is in Georgia, and so most funds are going to want a gross yield to be in about the 9% range, is what I'm seeing right now. So we need this to be 9%. This is for the fund, equals fund. So what this pretty much tells me at the current asking price of $300,000, this is going to be a no-go, right? This will not work, unfortunately. Most likely, we're going to need this if we were to run these numbers again. So now we know what doesn't work. So how do we get that 8% to a 9%? There's only two ways. Either bring the purchase price down on the property or limit the rehab on the property. Well, the rehab on the property is pretty minimal here, so I'm kind of stuck to limiting the purchase price here. So if we were going to try this again, let's say, we're going to take the 25 200 and we'll take that and pretend that the full cost of the property is 270,000, right? So what I'm saying here is I'm going to negotiate the purchase price down to 260,000 and add 10,000 for the rehab, right? And so now if I do this equation, we're going to do 25,200 and divide it by our total purchase price of 270,000, and that gives us a 9.3% gross yield. So now I know that I need this property at $270,000 to have a chance at selling this to a fund, right? Unfortunately, this seller is not going to move at that price. It's a nice house, it's in good shape. If this house maybe needed a little bit more work, it might be a little easier to talk the seller down a little bit more here. But for now, this is a pass. It's not going to work. In essence, this is how we run our numbers for funds. Now, I'm showing you about 5% of the process here. Now, when we dig in deeper and deeper and deeper, we learn exactly what numbers to get to, how to create spreads with funds. And so, if this is something that you want to learn, tap in. This is what I teach in my mentorship. I teach the different gross yields for the different markets. These gross yields do go up and down depending on what's happening in the market, right? If it's, days on market will come into play, and that could be purchase homes that are for sale, homes that are for rent. The time of the year comes into play. If there's tenants, if it's seller occupied, if they need post-closing occupancies, contract processes, everything comes into play when we get to this number. And so, you know, if you think that you can be a good fit for the mentorship, please tap in. We can have a conversation. I can see if you are a good fit. We can go from there, and hopefully we can get some deals done with you. So, like I said, tap in, link below. Let's get some deals done.